You are hearing these words at the exact moment you were meant to, not a second earlier, not a breath later. Something in you has been vibrating just beneath awareness, pulling you toward a truth you've sensed but never named. You are standing at the threshold of a quantum shift, the kind that rearranges the patterns of your reality the moment you understand it. This isn't motivation, this isn't theory, this is a code, a frequency, a doorway hidden in plain sight that only reveals itself to those who are ready. And right now, you are being invited through when you first sense a new possibility in your life. It never arrives as a loud announcement. It doesn't come with trumpets or visions or a dramatic bolt of revelation. It comes as something quieter, almost fragile, like a shift in the air, a subtle feeling that something is opening. You may call it intuition, alignment, a nudge, a whisper. But at the quantum level, it is far more than that. It is the field responding to you before you act, before you plan, before you even understand what's happening. Most people overlook this because they expect transformation to begin after a major decision. They think change starts with the moment they declare a goal, take a step, or make a commitment. But the truth is far stranger, more mystical, and more validating than that. The shift begins the moment your awareness touches a new potential. The mere recognition of a different timeline is enough to send a ripple through the field. Think of it like a match you haven't struck yet. Even before the flame appears, the potential for fire is already there, waiting, charged, ready. When you glimpse a possibility for your life, you ignite that same invisible readiness. The field feels that spark instantly. It's not waiting for your confidence, it's not waiting for your certainty. It's responding to the change in your perception. Why? Because in the quantum world, perception is influence. Attention is participation. The moment you see differently, you exist differently. That subtle shift inside you is not psychological, it's energetic. It is a reconfiguration, a directional pull, a signal that your timeline is beginning to soften around the edges. And here's the paradox you may have felt without knowing how to name it. The earliest signs of a quantum shift don't feel like expansion, they feel like confusion. They feel like restlessness, like your old life suddenly feels too small, too tight, too scripted. This discomfort isn't a sign that something is wrong. It's proof that the field is already rearranging. You are sensing the walls of your old identity loosening before your new identity takes shape. The confusion is simply your mind trying to understand a process the field has already initiated. You're feeling the echo of a shift that has already begun. This is why your most powerful changes often feel inevitable in hindsight. You look back and realize the shift started long before you took action. It started before you made a choice. It started before you had language for it. Something in you knew, something in the field responded, and the two began moving toward each other long before you consciously noticed. That moment, the moment you first sense a new possibility, is the moment reality begins reorganizing, not because you forced it, but because you observed it, because you allowed yourself to imagine something beyond what you've known. There is a sacred intelligence in this process, one that doesn't wait for your readiness. The field doesn't ask for permission. It simply mirrors the frequency you broadcast. And when your awareness touches a higher possibility, even lightly, even for a second, your frequency shifts. That shift is the true command. The field hears it before you speak it. It begins preparing the path before you take a single step. And although the change is immediate, the evidence arrives slowly, piece by piece, often disguised as coincidences, synchronicities, or unexpected opportunities. You may feel as if the world is rearranging itself around you, and in many ways it is. But not because you are manipulating reality. You aren't bending the universe, you are aligning with it. You're matching it, resonating with it, speaking the language it always understood, but you are only now remembering. And once that resonance begins, even subtly, the shift becomes unavoidable. The timeline begins to move, the field responds, and your reality, in quiet ways at first, begins to turn toward you. The moment you begin to understand that your inner state is the true command that shapes your reality, something inside you softens, because suddenly the pressure to make things happen begins to dissolve. You realize that life isn't responding to your wishes, your affirmations, or the words you repeat over and over again. It is responding to the energy beneath those words. It is responding to the state you inhabit when no one is watching and nothing is being forced. Your mind may declare one intention, but your body always reveals the real message, and the quantum field follows the body, not the sentences you recite. This is why you can want something deeply, visualize it vividly, and still feel like nothing changes, because wanting is not the same as embodying and thinking is not the same as becoming. Your state is the truest, clearest signal you ever broadcast. It is the language the field understands instantly. When your emotions, your expectations, and your identity align, even for a brief moment, they generate a frequency that reality cannot ignore. It's like striking a tuning fork. Once the note is pure, the world around you begins to resonate with it. You don't need to push. You don't need to beg. You don't need to convince the universe to give you what you desire. You simply need to become the version of yourself that naturally expects it, naturally aligns with it, naturally feels at home in the life you're calling in. And here's the paradox that most people never realize. The state you're in now is often shaped by memories, not possibilities. Your body holds the echoes of old emotions, old stories, old disappointments, and these echoes broadcast far louder than the conscious thoughts you're using to try to manifest something new. You might think you're signaling abundance, love, expansion, or transformation, but your body may still be broadcasting fear, unworthiness, or uncertainty. This isn't your fault. It's simply what happens when we try to create a new reality with an old emotional blueprint. The field hears the deeper broadcast, not the surface one. But the moment you shift your state, even slightly, the entire field reorganizes. You've felt this before, even if you didn't recognize it. Think about the moments when something in you suddenly clicked into place, a surge of confidence, a moment of clarity, a wave of calm, and suddenly everything around you seemed to flow easier. People responded differently. Opportunities appeared where there were none. Obstacles softened. That wasn't coincidence. That was the field responding to your coherence. When your inner world changes, the outer world mirrors it with almost eerie precision. And this is where the deeper truth emerges. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are willing to feel. If you are willing to feel trust, life gives you experiences that match trust. If you are willing to feel worthiness, the field brings you places where you are valued. If you are willing to feel abundance, doors open in ways you can't predict. Embodiment is the signal. The field doesn't require perfection. It simply requires consistency. A stable inner frequency holds more power than 1,000 fleeting affirmations. There is a strange, beautiful intelligence at work in all of this. Your state doesn't just communicate with the field, it instructs it. Your energy is not a passive presence, it is an active command. Every time you shift your emotional atmosphere, the field recalibrates to meet you. The universe is not withholding anything from you, it is matching you faithfully, moment by moment, breath by breath. And when you finally feel the alignment between who you are inside and what you are calling in, reality doesn't resist. It yields, it rearranges, it bends toward you, not because you forced it, but because you stabilized a state it could finally resonate with. When you understand this, you stop trying to chase outcomes. You stop trying to micromanage the process. You stop fighting your own energy. Instead, you begin to cultivate the state that naturally attracts what you desire. You begin to speak the language of the field through emotion, expectation, and identity, not through effort. And when that alignment clicks, when your inner state becomes the truth rather than the performance, the shift is immediate. Reality has no choice but to follow. When you begin to understand coherence, not as a concept but as an experience, everything about manifestation and quantum reality suddenly becomes simpler, almost disarmingly so. Coherence isn't about perfection, and it isn't about controlling every thought or emotion. It's the moment when your inner world stops arguing with itself, when your thoughts stop contradicting your desires, when your emotions stop dragging you backward, when your energy stops scattering in 1,000 different directions. In that moment, something extraordinary happens. Timelines collapse. Possibilities that once seemed far away begin folding toward you, as if reality itself is leaning in, ready to meet you halfway. Most people never experience this consciously because they are living in a split state. They want one thing, fear another, expect something else, and embody something entirely different. This fragmentation isn't a flaw, it's simply the result of being human, shaped by experiences, memories, and the stories we tell ourselves. But fragmentation makes your signal weak. Your energy becomes diffused, like light passing through fog. It glows, but it cannot focus, and the quantum field responds to the clarity of your signal, not the intensity of your desire. This is why you can crave something deeply and still feel like nothing is moving. The desire is strong, but the frequency is scattered. Coherence changes everything. It is the moment when your inner state sharpens into a single unified message. It doesn't matter how brief that moment is. Seconds are enough, because at the quantum level, coherence is power. It's alignment. It's a vibrational yes that reality cannot misinterpret. You may have felt these fleeting moments without realizing their significance. A moment of certainty that seemed to come from nowhere. A sudden calm that wiped out all doubt. A surge of knowing that didn't need validation. In those moments, you weren't manifesting. You were collapsing a timeline. You were choosing, not with your mind, but with your entire field. And here's the paradox. Coherence often comes right after you stop fighting. When you stop trying to force the outcome, stop trying to micromanage the how, stop trying to solve everything with logic, your energy naturally begins to align. You drop resistance without even realizing that's what you're doing. Your body relaxes, your breath deepens, your mind softens its grip. And suddenly, you become receptive. You enter a state that isn't about striving but allowing. That's coherence. It feels like surrender, but it is actually the highest form of power, because it aligns you with the truth of what is already possible. When coherence occurs, the field reacts instantly. The shift doesn't wait. The quantum world reorganizes the moment you stop contradicting yourself. The outer world may take time to rearrange, but the energetic shift is immediate. This is why synchronicities often show up as the first signs of alignment. They are the field reflecting your coherence in small, almost playful ways. A chance encounter, a surprising message, a sudden opportunity. These are not accidents. They are echoes of the timeline you just collapsed into. Coherence sends a ripple through the field, and reality begins to respond in patterns, aligning itself with the frequency you've stabilized. But perhaps the most empowering truth is this: coherence does not require you to be healed, perfect, or fearless. It requires only that for a moment, you stop betraying your own desire, that you stop arguing against your own becoming. When you hold a state of genuine alignment, when your mind, heart, and energy speak the same truth, you become a magnet for the reality that matches it. Not because you forced it, but because you finally matched the version of you that lives in that reality. And once you've felt coherence even once, you can never forget it. Your body remembers the sensation, the clarity, the resonance. You begin to recognize the difference between acting from fragmentation and acting from alignment. You start noticing when your energy is sharp and when it's scattered. And slowly, without effort, you begin gravitating toward the states that produce coherence. Not because someone told you to, but because your field knows the path home. Reality doesn't change because you push it. It changes because you become the version of yourself it has always been waiting for. And in the moments when coherence settles over you, even briefly, the shift is undeniable, immediate, and already unfolding. The moment you begin to see identity, not desire, as the true architecture of your reality, everything starts to make sense. You realize why certain patterns repeat no matter how hard you try to escape them, and why some breakthroughs happen effortlessly while others feel blocked no matter how intensely you visualize or affirm. It's because the field is not responding to your wishes, it is responding to who you are being. Identity is the silent blueprint that shapes every timeline you step into. And the most paradoxical part of all is that your identity is often invisible to you because you're swimming in it every day. You don't notice the water you've lived in. You don't notice the self you've practiced becoming. Identity is not a label, not a personality, not a list of traits. It is a frequency, a signature, a lived state of expectation. It is what your nervous system believes is normal, familiar, and safe. You manifest from that familiarity, not from fantasy. This is why people say they want abundance but continue attracting struggle. They desire love but continue tolerating disappointment. They long for expansion but remain loyal to limitation. It's not because they are unworthy or unlucky, it's because their identity is still anchored to an older version of themselves, a version formed through repetition, survival, history, and memory. The field simply mirrors that version until something inside you shifts. And when that shift begins, it's rarely glamorous. It often starts with discomfort, an inner friction, a sense that you no longer fit inside the person you've been pretending to be. You begin noticing the edges of your old identity like a garment that's become too tight. You feel restless inside roles you once accepted. You sense a misalignment between what you want and who you've allowed yourself to be. This discomfort is not a step backward. It is proof that your identity is loosening. You are outgrowing the timeline that was built around your previous self. Identity shifts aren't created through effort. They're created through recognition. The moment you recognize that you no longer resonate with a version of yourself, you begin withdrawing energy from it. And when you withdraw energy, the structure collapses. The timeline dissolves because it has nothing left to sustain it. The new identity doesn't arrive all at once. It emerges through subtle choices, choosing a thought that expands you rather than contracts you, choosing a response that reflects who you're becoming rather than who you've been, choosing to honor the self you are stepping into instead of the one you've been rehearsing for years. And here's the sacred paradox. The moment you begin embodying even a fraction of your future identity, the field shifts instantly. Not when you master it, not when you prove it, not when you're perfect. The field responds to the slightest stabilization of a new internal truth. Even a moment of genuine alignment is enough to begin rearranging your external reality. This is why small energetic shifts often create outsized effects. Your identity is like the tuning fork that sets the tone for everything else. When the tone changes, your entire environment gradually adjusts to match it. You don't need to become the future version of yourself. You only need to stop reinforcing the version you no longer want to live as. Reality will do the rest. It has no choice but to reshape itself around the observer who is experiencing it. When your identity shifts, your perception shifts. When your perception shifts, your frequency shifts. And when your frequency shifts, your timeline shifts. What you once had to chase begins moving toward you because you are now the version of yourself who expects it, who resonates with it, who can hold it without collapsing. Identity is the silent architect behind every quantum shift. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It nudges. It invites you to become someone you haven't fully witnessed yet, but can already feel in your bones. And when you finally allow yourself to step into that becoming, your world doesn't just change. It reorganizes itself around the new truth you're living. Not because you forced it, but because the field always reflects who you believe you are. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forces in the entire manifestation process. And yet it is the very key that unlocks the quantum shift you've already set in motion. Most people hear the word detach and assume it means to stop caring, to stop wanting, to give up on what they desire. But that is not detachment. That is resignation. True detachment is something entirely different, lighter, deeper, and profoundly more powerful. It is the moment when your energy stops gripping, stops clinging, stops distorting the signal you're sending into the field. It's the moment when you release the emotional tension that has been interfering with the very reality you've been trying to create. When you hold on too tightly, your energy contracts. You focus not on the outcome, but on the fear of not having it. You may think you're manifesting with intention, but you're actually broadcasting lack, urgency, or attachment. The field reads that tension instantly, not as punishment, but as information. It hears your desire coated in fear, and reflects the fear more loudly than the desire. This is why the things we obsess over often feel the furthest away. The grip pushes them out of resonance. The harder you try to force the timeline, the more you distort the frequency that would have aligned you with it. And yet, the moment you release that grip, truly release it, the shift is immediate. It feels like a softening in your chest, a breath you didn't know you were holding, a quiet surrender that brings more power than all the force you applied before. This surrender is not giving up, it is letting go of the interference. The desire remains, the vision remains, the intention remains, but the desperation dissolves, the fear dissolves, the emotional static dissolves. What's left is a clean, coherent signal, a frequency that the quantum field can finally match without distortion. You've felt this before, even if you didn't recognize it as detachment. Think of a time when you stopped obsessing over something, an opportunity, a relationship, a decision, and the moment you relaxed, the answer appeared. The moment you stopped chasing, the call came. The moment you stopped worrying, the solution arrived. That wasn't coincidence. That was the quantum field responding to coherence restored through detachment. It could not deliver what you were gripping onto, because your grip was jamming the signal. The moment the grip released, the pathway opened. And here lies the paradox. You often detach not because you've mastered surrender, but because you're simply too tired to keep holding on. Exhaustion forces release. You stop fighting. You stop overthinking. You stop trying to control every outcome. And in that moment of, I can't do this anymore, you accidentally fall into the very state the field needed from you all along. The freedom, the openness, the trust, the letting go that creates the vibrational space for the new reality to arrive. But you don't need to wait for exhaustion to reach this state. You can enter it deliberately. Detachment becomes easier the moment you understand that once you have aligned your identity, stabilized your state, and generated coherence, the shift has already happened on the quantum level. You are not waiting for it, you are simply waiting to see it. Detachment is the recognition that the field is already reorganizing on your behalf. It is the knowing that the unseen is underway. It is the faith that what is energetically done must eventually become physically visible. This is why detachment feels peaceful, because your nervous system finally understands that the outcome does not require effort anymore. You do not need to force what is already moving toward you. You do not need to control what is already unfolding. You do not need to prove anything to a universe that has already said yes. Detachment is not the end of desire, it is the purification of desire. It removes the fear wrapped around your wanting and leaves only the truth of what you are calling in. And when you reach this level of emotional clarity, even briefly, the shift accelerates. Reality snaps into place in ways that feel effortless, surprising, almost too aligned to be logical. Because detachment doesn't slow the manifestation process, it unleashes it. The strangest and most beautiful truth about quantum shifts is that they happen instantly, yet you rarely recognize them in the moment. The field updates the second your state changes, the instant your identity shifts, the moment coherence settles in your body. Reality responds immediately, but matter, form, and physical circumstances need time to rearrange themselves into the new pattern you've activated. This delay isn't a gap in the process, it's part of the process. It's the unseen interval where everything is already different, but nothing looks different yet. And this is where most people lose faith, because they confuse silence with stagnation, and stillness with nothing happening. But the silence is not empty. It is full of movement, alignment, restructuring, full of the invisible architecture of your new timeline assembling behind the scenes. When a shift happens, it often feels anticlimactic precisely because the most profound changes occur beneath awareness. You expect fireworks, divine signs, dramatic sensations. But the quantum world doesn't speak in theatrics. It speaks in subtlety, precision, quiet recalibration. You feel a soft knowing, a calm you can't explain, a sense of being slightly out of place in your old reality, as if the world around you hasn't caught up with the world inside you. And that feeling, that slight dissonance between who you were and who you've become, is the earliest evidence that the shift already occurred. Your inner timeline moved. Your external timeline is following. This delay is not a test of worthiness. It's not the universe withholding anything from you. It's simply the gap between energetic change and physical manifestation. Imagine changing the direction of a river. The instant the new channel is carved, the water begins to flow differently, but it takes time before the entire river reflects that shift. The flow changes before the landscape does. That's exactly what happens inside you. Your energetic flow shifts instantly. Your physical experience reshapes gradually. And here is the paradox that many people never realize. The moment after the shift is often when doubt hits the hardest. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is happening. Your old identity senses its dissolution and tries to pull you back into familiar patterns. Your mind wants to see proof before it believes. Your nervous system wants confirmation before it trusts. But reality can't deliver that confirmation until the new timeline stabilizes. Doubt becomes the final echo of your past self, the final pull of the old field trying to reclaim you. When doubt feels the strongest, it is often a sign that you are already standing in the new timeline, waiting for the physical world to catch up. This is why patience in the quantum world isn't passive. It isn't sitting and waiting. It's holding the frequency of the new identity long enough for the external world to mirror it back to you. It's trusting the invisible process. It's allowing the unseen to unfold without collapsing back into old patterns, simply because results haven't yet materialized. The shift is already complete. Your recognition of the shift is what takes time. If you look closely, you'll notice that the earliest signs of the new timeline arrive as subtle synchronicities, people appearing at the right moment, opportunities, aligning in improbable ways, intuitive nudges guiding you toward places you wouldn't have considered before. These are the first cracks in the old reality, the first rays of light breaking through, the first indicators that you are moving through a world that has already been rearranged by your earlier shift. Synchronicity is not the beginning of the shift. It is the evidence that the shift has already happened. And then at some point, often quietly, without drama, you realize that the thing you once longed for is simply part of your life now. It doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives with familiarity, because by the time it appears, you've already become the version of yourself who matches it. The manifestation feels natural because the identity shift happened long before the physical outcome. You expanded first. Reality followed. This is the secret most people never learn. The shift is instant, but the recognition is gradual. The moment you understand this, you stop questioning every delay. You stop interrupting the process with fear. You stop collapsing timelines from impatience. Instead, you learn to hold the new frequency with quiet certainty, knowing that the universe is simply aligning the visible world with the invisible choice you already made.